Howdy everyone, and welcome to another of my weird lens reviews. Today we have one in a series about Holga lenses. We are looking at one that's simply called the Holga lens, or HL, popularly known as their toy lens. Depending on whether you have the Canon mount version, Sony or Nikon version, etc., it comes with a C or an S or an N at the end. But apart from the mount, they're all the same though. Here I have the HLC, or Canon version. They come in a variety of colours, and I'm glad I got this red one. It looks pretty badass. The idea is that, what with the popularity of lomography, or photography that looks all low quality and retro, you can get this lens for your expensive digital SLR camera and get some funky looking, low quality pictures with lots of vignetting and chromatic aberrations and other weird optical problems. I can smell the sweet irony about it. The lens itself only costs about £20, so you really can't complain with what you're getting here. Its focal length is 60mm, so it is a little zoomed in, good for getting a real emphasis on your subject. It has a fixed aperture of f8. Actually, Holga are being pretty sneaky, because the lens's real aperture is about 8 times darker, about f22. That's because there's a further aperture plate at the back of the lens, which is designed to give you vignetting in the corners of your images and presumably introduce softness by way of diffraction, and make it easier to focus by giving you a wider depth of field. So, because it lets through so little light, this lens is very hard to use indoors or in dark situations. It's rather tricky of Holga to claim that this is an f8 lens if you have to physically hack off the rear aperture plate in order to achieve this. You can find instructions on the internet for how to hack it into being an f8 lens, and apparently you get further optical problems, but check on Google for more information. The lens itself has an uncoated plastic optical element, and you can focus by turning around the front part of the lens. It's very stiff to turn. Interestingly, if you turn it around quite quickly for a while, then the focus ring gets quite loose for a short time. Holga are clearly using some kind of soft glue to make sure that the focus ring is heavy to turn, which loosens if it warms up from friction or by other means. The lens has no filter thread, so you can't use filters. Well, let's take a look at the lens's image quality. We'll start by testing on a 20 megapixel Canon 70D. On this APS-C camera, unsurprisingly, the image quality is very soft, but you can at least make out what's going on, unlike on the Holga pinhole lens. Contrast levels are very low. As we turn our attention to the corners of the image, we see tons of vignetting and a healthy portion of chromatic aberration. Very healthy. To be fair though, this is exactly what you want to see in a lomography style lens. The picture quality is horrendous, and so it looks cool. Even though the lens is designed for use on a cropped sensor camera, let's look at the image quality on a full frame camera, where we see a whole shed load of vignetting. The lens is sharper than it was on APS-C in the middle of the image, giving a reasonably clear picture. In the corners, well, before they become invisibly dark, we do see the same sort of levels of chromatic aberration and vignetting. So, overall, the lens is soft, but you can get usable images, and the lomography effect is strong, which looks pretty cool. The minimum focus distance of this lens seems to be about 1.5 meters, so you can forget about getting any close-up pictures. The contrast levels on this lens are pretty low as it is, but when you get bright lights in or just outside of your picture frame, all hell breaks loose, with all kinds of flaring popping up all over the place. Overall, playing around with the Holga toy lens is a fun, if somewhat limited, experience. It'll be most at home being used outdoors on a sunny day. Holga also sell add-ons for this lens, like fisheye or telephoto attachments. Apparently they're not very good, so I'm not going to bother reviewing them. At the end of the day, this Holga toy lens is a fun way to remind yourself not to take your photography too seriously. And considering its very low price, it could make an amusing gift for any special fellow photographer in your life.